Watching my sister go through labor and childbirth right in front of me was a surreal experience. Ellie confessed she'd intended to put her baby up for adoption, a decision she now deeply regretted. "I need him, Aria. He's mine," she pleaded. Knowing our parents were away for a conference gave us a brief respite. It gave us time to think, to plan. Cleaning up the aftermath of the delivery in our bathroom was my immediate task, ensuring no trace was left behind. But Ellie's plea for help echoed in my ears, amplifying my determination to support her. Our bond had frayed over the years, but witnessing such a profound moment had rekindled our sisterly connection. Having our parents, both adept lawyers, to advocate for Ellie's wishes would have been ideal, but involving them wasn't feasible. Ellie was required to stay at the hospital for another day post-delivery, which left me with precious little time to strategize and make things right. After ensuring our home was in order, my focus shifted entirely to reclaiming what was rightfully Ellie's. When I found out that the adoption couldn't proceed without our parents' consent, I felt a surge of hope. I dashed to the hospital to share the promising discovery with Ellie. However, the moment I entered her room, something felt off. Her usual vibrant eyes were clouded with guilt and despair. Ellie confessed, "Aria, I forged their signatures." I felt a surge of panic. Of all the signatures she could have faked, she chose those of our parents. Established lawyers who could potentially lose their licenses over this. I was overwhelmed by a whirlwind of emotions. Frustration, disbelief, and anger gripped me. All the chaos Ellie had inadvertently invited into our lives until this point had been manageable. But this was a colossal mess. A legal quagmire with repercussions beyond what we'd faced. As much as I wanted to let my anger loose, one look at her vulnerability and remorse, melted my rage away. Here was my sister, a new mother, wrestling with the monumental decisions she'd made. Adding to her emotional turmoil was the last thing she needed. We needed a solution, and we needed it fast. I gently shook Ellie, pulling her from a restless slumber. "Ellie," I whispered, "there's a way, but I need to know who the father is." She groaned and turned her face away, not meeting my eyes. "Why does it matter?" she mumbled, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Because he can help us," I explained. "If the father never gave his consent for the adoption, he can contest it. We can get your baby back." She hesitated, torn between wanting her baby and protecting her secret. After a heavy sigh, her voice was just above a whisper. "It's not that simple, Aria." Frustrated, I responded, "Ellie, nothing about this situation has been simple, but we're in it together. Trust me, please." Her eyes filled with tears, and after what felt like an eternity, she whispered a name. It was someone I knew, and understanding why she'd been hesitant to admit it, things began to fall into place. With that piece of the puzzle, I felt more hopeful than ever that we could turn things around. But first, we had to approach him and hope he'd be willing to be part of this fight. "Madison, really?" I muttered to myself, my heart sinking. Ellie had always been drawn to the troubled souls, always believing she could be the one to change them. But this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Juvenile hall, petty crimes. Gathering my courage, I decided I had to meet him. Maybe, just maybe, he didn't know about the baby, and if he did, perhaps he'd want to be a part of his child's life. The stakes were high, but we had nothing to lose. The next day, I found myself standing outside the juvenile detention center, my stomach tied in knots. After explaining my situation to the warden, I was allowed to meet Madison. The room was cold and sterile, with Madison seated on the other side of a thick glass divider. His eyes were wary, almost defiant, but there was also an underlying vulnerability that I hadn't expected. "Madison," I began hesitantly. "I'm Aria, Ellie's sister." He blinked, seemingly taken aback. "Ellie, why are you here?" Taking a deep breath, I dove straight in. "Ellie had a baby, your baby." For a moment, he looked stunned, and then a mix of emotions played out on his face: shock, disbelief, anger, and finally sadness. This was just the beginning, and I wasn't sure where this journey would lead us, but at least now, we have a starting point. Look, Aria, he began slowly, measuring his words carefully. This is a complex situation, but given the circumstances and the potential complications, I'm willing to help. Firstly, we need to ascertain Madison's rights as the father. My heart leaped with gratitude. Thank you so much, Mr. Evans. I wasn't sure who else to turn to. He chuckled lightly. Well, let's just say I've seen my fair share of complicated family situations in my line of work. We'll meet tomorrow. Get as much information as you can from Ellie about Madison and the circumstances surrounding the baby. We hung up, and I rushed back to the hospital to speak with Ellie. The weight of the situation was evident on her face, but there was a new glint of hope in her eyes when I told her about Mr. Evans' willingness to help. We spent the rest of the evening talking, and Ellie filled me in on her relationship with Madison. It was clear to me that beneath his rough exterior, Madison had once been someone Ellie genuinely cared for, and with Mr. Evans on our side, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find a solution that would reunite Ellie with her baby. But the road ahead was uncertain, and I braced myself for the challenges that lay ahead. Madison's initial aloofness soon transformed into an intense focus. As the gravity of the situation became clear to him, he uncrossed his arms and leaned forward, actively engaging with us. He seemed shocked to hear about the baby, Ellie's decisions, and how it had all been kept from him. I didn't know, Madison whispered, looking down, his tough facade crumbling. Ellie and we had our differences, but I never imagined she would keep something like this from me. My friend's dad, Mr. Evans, took out a few documents and explained the legal position to Madison. Given that your rights as a father were never taken into account, you might have a valid claim against the adoption, but it's not going to be easy, and there will be a lot of legal hurdles to cross. Madison nodded slowly, digesting the information. I want to be there for my child, he said resolutely, no matter what. I felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was hopeful that Madison genuinely wanted to be a good father. On the other hand, I was wary given his past, but seeing him in that moment, vulnerable and sincere, made me believe in the possibility of redemption. After our meeting, Madison thanked us and promised to cooperate in every way possible. As Mr. Evans and I left the center, I was filled with hope that we were on the right track. With Madison on board, we had a better shot at challenging the adoption and bringing the baby back to Ellie. But I knew that the journey ahead would be challenging and filled with uncertainty. Mr. Evans cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses as he composed himself. Whether or not Ellie's intentions were clear from the beginning, the fact remains that there are legal irregularities in this adoption, he began, using his calm, authoritative voice that demanded attention. The signatures were forged, and without the proper consent of both parents, the adoption could potentially be declared void. Skylar scoffed. You think I'm just going to hand over the baby because of some technicality? This is family we're talking about. Mr. Evans simply nodded. I understand the emotional weight of this situation, but my duty here is to make sure the legal process is followed. If there are breaches, they need to be addressed. Skylar leaned back, arms folded. So what's next? A legal battle. That's going to be great for everyone involved, especially the baby. I piped in, look, Skylar, we're trying to figure out the best solution here. I was under the impression that Ellie wanted her child back. If she willingly gave the baby up, then I need to know the truth from her. But for now, we have to address these legal discrepancies. Skylar sighed, running a hand through his hair. This is a mess, he murmured. Mr. Evans added, the best course of action now would be for everyone involved to sit down and discuss this. We need to understand everyone's perspective and make a decision that is best for the child. I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. Anger at Ellie for not being honest, sympathy for Skylar and his family, and worry for the baby caught in the middle of all of this. But I hoped that, with open communication, we could find a resolution that was in the best interests of everyone involved. I sat there, overwhelmed by the revelations and the gravity of the situation. Skylar looked visibly distressed too, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Ellie and I were trying to do what we thought was best for the baby, given our situations." Mr. Evans adjusted his tie. "Regardless of your intentions, this situation is now far more complicated. We have to address the forgery issue and find a resolution that will protect the interests of the child." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. "Skylar, why didn't you and Ellie just come forward with the truth from the beginning? Now we're in a situation where legalities could tear this baby away from a loving family." Skylar looked down, guilt evident on his face. Fear. We were scared of our family's reactions, of judgment, of the future. Mr. Evans chimed in. "The first step is getting everyone involved to talk. We need transparency and understanding. The main goal should be the well-being of the child." The weight of the situation pressed down on me. How had things spiraled out of control so quickly? My priority was to ensure the safety and happiness of the baby, but with so many complexities, it was going to be a challenging journey. The weight of the room seemed to grow even heavier as I entered, the tension palpable. My parents' anger was clear, and Ellie's face was streaked with tears. The atmosphere was charged with regret and confusion. "Why didn't you just talk to us first?" Dad's voice was filled with a mix of anger and desperation. Mom just sat there, looking utterly defeated, her face buried in her hands. Ellie finally found her voice, albeit shaky. "I was scared. Scared of your reaction, of being judged, of losing my baby to strangers. I thought I was doing the right thing." Her voice broke, her sobbing making it hard for her to continue. I stepped forward, trying to mediate. "We made mistakes. All of us. But can we not find a way forward for the sake of the child? It's not about us anymore. It's about him." Dad shook his head. "It's too late now. The papers are signed. All we can do is hope the child has a good life." The cold reality of the situation struck all of us. Regret was evident on every face. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. Over time, the wounds began to heal slowly. Ellie received counseling to cope with her grief. Our relationship with our parents improved, although the topic of the baby remained a sensitive one for a long time. As for Madison, he served his time and eventually got out, trying to make amends for his past actions. Life moved on, but the echoes of those fateful days remained with us, a somber reminder of the consequences of our actions and the intricate web of relationships that tied us together. Despite the whirlwind of events, the dust finally settled and clarity emerged from the chaos. Ellie was spared any legal consequences due to a grace period that fortunately covered situations like ours. Our parents grappled with a complex blend of emotions: disappointment that Ellie had become pregnant so young, but profound hurt stemming from the web of secrets and deception she had spun. Yet, in the midst of the storm, a silver lining emerged. Ellie, although young and unprepared for the responsibilities of motherhood, had gifted Madison's cousin and his wife the opportunity to start a family. Every picture they shared, every update about the baby, reflected pure joy. It was impossible to ignore the happiness Ellie's decision had brought into their lives. For our family, this entire episode was transformative. It served as a wake-up call, a poignant reminder of the importance of communication, trust, and understanding. We realized that while we couldn't change the past, we could mold our future. Ellie's relationship with our parents began to heal, slowly but surely. As for me, I became the bridge that helped mend the fractured bonds. The most unexpected change came from our mother. Recognizing that her career had sometimes taken precedence over family, she decided to recalibrate her priorities. Cutting back on her work hours, she started investing more time in us. Our home began echoing with laughter, shared meals, and heartfelt conversations more frequently. It's ironic how life works sometimes. It often takes a seismic event to shift our perspectives, to make us appreciate the treasures we often overlook. For us, it was this ordeal that realigned our values and brought us closer. And in that sense, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing after all.